Rescue Wop. Save the dinosaurs from an island that's about to explode. What could go wrong?
Hello, welcome to Fallen Kingdom. We return to Jurassic World 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And this week we're back to discuss minute 12 of Fallen Kingdom. But before we get to that, David, heading over to Jurassic-Pedia.com, we got a big article up here from Troodon Formosus on Biosyn Valley, this area location for the final act, or third act of Dominion. Bit of a write-up here in the valley, and the full species list that we know of at the end of the film that is currently inhabiting the valley. And yeah, currently the animals we know that still exist by the end of the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Biosyn Valley is probably is my favorite location of the entire movie, just because it's so beautifully done, and the whole set design is so well done. I really love it.
We discussed when we were starting to see some of the behind the scenes pictures coming off set of just some of that, the moss, the extra moss and everything being added to trees just to make it look even more sort of ancient and prehistoric. We don't get to see a lot of it in the film, unfortunately, because we've got the dam sequence in the ice and that sort of stuff as well. So there's only a couple of main action sequences in the forest itself. But I think what we see on screen, especially the when the Ferrozinosaurus goes after Claire and that, just the jungle looks, the forest looks fantastic.
Oh, it does. They really went hard on the set design. They didn't need to, but they did that for us.
Yep. And of course, the crown jewel in the valley is Biosyn headquarters as well. The head of the valley with the... well, it's weird because we got the trailer photos here as one of the story photos, and it's clearly in the middle of the valley with the river running through it, where we know from the film it's sort of set up much like the visitor centre was in the original Jurassic Park novel, up in the northern mountains, or at the end of the valley anyway, so I could look down over the entire stretch of the valley from the control room and that. So, but no, good little article here, and it sort of gives us that list of at least the 20 species that we know are still alive at the end of the film. What ones may pop up in Camp Cretaceous, which is about to drop on Netflix. We do not know yet, but it'll be interesting to find out. Also interesting too, how many of these they took from sauna. We know they liberated some animals from sauna. It's mentioned in the film. I just wonder if any of these. Well, we know for sure Tyrannosaurus Rex. We get the pair at the end of the film, so we know they'll definitely take them from sauna. But for more on Biosyn, more on Dominion, and more on Jurassic, head over to Jurassic-Pedia.com for this article and many more.
Hello?
May I speak with Miss Deering?
Yes, this is Claire Deering.
Good morning. I'm calling from Mr. Benjamin Lockwood's estate. Would you mind holding for a second?
Yes, of course, I'll hold.
Alright, Dave, ready to get to minute 12.
I am.
Minute 12 of Fallen Kingdom opens with a breaking news bulletin from Capitol Hill and ends with Claire holding. She's going to hold for Lockwood. But before we get to there, as the minute opens, Zia calls to Claire that it's on, i.e. the TV. Claire grabs the TV remote and turns the volume up. And one little interesting thing here, we do have the clock on the back wall that matches the time on the news broadcast as well. I think we've called out every time we see a watch or a clock in these films, it's always different. Or more so the time of filming and not the time in world when it's supposed to take place, but they actually get one to match up here. And also there's a fundraiser goal poster on the wall to the right. Looking at it, they've raised $2,000 with a goal of $10,000. I haven't looked into buying remote islands or sanctuaries for dinosaurs, but I'm pretty sure you need more than 10 grand.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe there was just a sessional goal, like they had already raised other money and the 10,000 was for one specific small part.
It could even just be the planning. Like, yeah, they want to save the dinosaurs, but they sort of need a business plan, if you will, and they need the 10 grand to set that, to either then go back to Congress, go to any rich millionaire and or billionaire and say, here, this is what we want to do, this is how much money we need, and all that sort of thing as well. But I'm sure there's pre-law students and that in the DPG as well that are there at a university doing volunteer work, or whatever, to set that sort of stuff up as well. But I thought 10,000 was a little low, considering what their main goal is. And interesting, I'm surprised we don't get a drop line from Mills later when the auction's happening, just how much money he paid or how much it costs to get the animals there. So we had sort of an idea of how much Operation Harvest would have been for InGen back in the day. We know creating all the vehicles and doing all the rounding up's not cheap.
Well, I do think that he kind of he does imply that he's spending a lot of money on this venture.
That might also be a reason why we're only auctioning off an ankylosaur for 5 million or whatever those end numbers are. Like, if he's only looking to pay back expenses plus profit on top, there may be a reason there why he's not sort of going for super profits, but we'll get there. The newscast changes to a spokesman. After thorough deliberations, the committee resolved not to recommend any action regarding the de-extinct creatures on Isla Nublar. This is an act of God, and while, of course, we feel great sympathy for these animals, pause there, we cannot condone government involvement on what amounts to a privately owned venture, which truly and really, that's a government saying, well, we're not going to stand in on a private island and do something when it's not really our responsibility. And really, we don't want to pay to do this when it's not our predicament, our issue, our need to do it. So, yep.
Not my problem. It's basically what he's saying.
And it is a shame we don't get anything at all from Masrani. If they just sort of, whether the payouts ended the company. We know from Jurassic World they had hundreds and hundreds of little subsidiaries and all that sort of thing, so some things would have stopped, other things wouldn't have. We just don't know what the outcome of Masrani is, what their involvement or what their even thoughts on it are, and if they could stop what Mills is doing, or what we learned Mills is going to be doing with getting on.
We don't even know what happens to InGen after the first Jurassic World movie. It's literally never mentioned.
We'll wait and see if Dominion poked any arrows at InGen, and they didn't. So I think we can pretty much confirm now that, as Hoskins said, InGen was Chapter 11 once that sun come up the next morning after the park was evacuated. Obviously, their security division was probably absorbed in the Masrani some other way, but I think definitely with a second park going wonko and InGen's name being involved, it's probably not a brand or a company name you'd want to have involved anymore. So unless it was a Biosyn buyout again after they then went Chapter 11, we don't really know. We don't get it in Dominion at all, but. Yeah, because we're gonna learn here. True. All this sort of stuff is Lockwood and Mills and not InGen. All the stuff under Lockwood Estate, the lab. It's all it's probably before InGen, but we're going to get to that when we get to the walk around and the dialogue we get about the history of Lockwood and Hammond. But yeah, and we mentioned like back when we had the ticker tape about the volcano and everything, if the government or if anyone would step in to save animals at a zoo, an abandoned zoo or anything like that, depending on what the animals are, of course, I don't think you're going to get Greenpeace going and try and rescue a T-Rex or velociraptors, but I'm sure they'll be in there trying to get the baby Triceratops and Gallimimus and that out of the park, which does make you wonder. Again, we don't really know if there was, well, I suppose Camp Cretaceous shows us there was only really Viv and Tiv, more Mitch and Tiv, the poachers in Camp Cretaceous. Whether anyone was sort of sneaking onto Nublar to rescue the petting zoo dinosaurs or anything, and probably not getting off the island alive anyway.
No. The only time I can actually recall, I know that for the most part, like when there's like a hurricane or something coming, that most zoos will actually that are it's left to the zookeepers basically to decide what to do with the animals. And in this case, Masrani seems to have all but abandoned their zoo.
I should mention too, there is a ticker tape here from the broadcast saying Masrani Global denies any obligations to the threatened animals. I just with the payout, the 800 million, there's no. It's just to wipe your hands of it and sweep it under the rug. This volcano is exactly what they need to wipe the island out, and just wipe that pain in the arse out, really.
Yeah. They seem to effectively be washing their hands of this entire venture. Which, in effect, is kind of the argument the people who are doing this are making to say that, well, nobody else is going to help. We have to be the ones to do it. So that they go in and effectively are illegally poaching these animals, but are saying that the only reason they're doing it is because nobody else will save them.
I can speed as long as I do it safely.
Pretty much.
Even after now Dominion, now knowing that Biosyn was taking animals off sauna as well, granted they were going back to the sanctuary, but then being experimented on or whatever, cloned, researched, everything else. Well, they did step in to save animals, so there was good intention there. But at the end of the day, the intention was to further their profit development, all that sort of thing as well. That's not really the right thing to do. But it also makes me wonder why we don't have the Jeff Bezos of the world or something stepping in to say, well, yeah, I want to get all these animals back to my ranch or something, and doing exactly what Eli's going to do. He's obviously just gets in quicker. Because as we know, as we get in the next couple of minutes, at this point, I feel that Mills's team, Ted Levine, all that are already on Nublar stripping the island, and the only reason Claire gets a phone call next minute is because they've run into the problem with Blue. But we'll get to that when we get a couple of minutes ahead, because there's again, the time jumps in this movie are frustrating. Claire mutters, mutes the broadcast, which is weird because it sounds like the sound of a CRT being turned off. It's just that real iconic noise as she hits the mute button. But she says they're all going to die and no one cares. Franklin says we do, and Claire turns to everyone there. They all care. But that's when her phone starts to ring on a desk, and Claire grabs Z's arm and tells him to give her a minute and let's get back to work. Claire picks up a phone and just says hello. No introduction at all. Over the line we can hear a stately woman. May I speak to Miss Deering? Claire says this is Claire Deering. The woman on the phone continues, Miss Deering, I'm calling from Benjamin Lockwood's estate. Would you mind holding for a second? And Claire says, yes, of course, I'll hold, as the music begins to swell and the minute ends. And we're about to cut to Lockwood Mansion in Northern California. Again, not a lot here to discuss in this minute, apart from Masrani not wanting to do anything and the Congress, American government not wanting to do anything either, which I didn't mention earlier, but not only, yes, it's a privately owned island, but with it being more than 100 miles off the coast of Costa Rica, really it's international waters, so it's not anyone's jurisdiction. And for the US to mount a rescue operation or whatever to go all the way down there to rescue the animals is just... I'm surprised they need Malcolm to convince them not to do it in the end. But looking over at novel comparisons briefly, Claire cuts the audio as we hear about the incident being an act of God. We don't get to hear the private venture ending, so that was something added for the film later after the novel was written. But that's minute 12. Dave, anything else to discuss before we get out of here for the week?
No, I think we're good.